For me, going to my initial weekend, it was, like I said, dumping a bucket of cold water for me. It woke me up. But what has helped me grow and mature and keep learning and keep getting up has been continuing to do my work.
Welcome to the Crucible Project podcast. The Crucible Project is a nonprofit organization committed to creating a world of men and women who live with integrity, grace, and courage, helping them to fulfill their God-given purpose. This podcast will discuss important and sometimes difficult topics while delivering practical life applications with men and women who are currently practicing this work. We are igniting Christ-like change in men and women through experiences of radical honesty and grace.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Andy Spell, and I am one of the interviewers for the Crucible Project podcast. This morning, I'm excited to have Mike Espinosa with us. He is a leader in the Houston community and in the Spanish language side of Crucible. So, Mike, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite, and happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you come from. I think it's important for folks to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm Mike Espinosa. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. I'm living in Houston, Texas now. Parents are from Mexico, so that's where my Mexican or Spanish heritage comes from. And I also preach. So that's a little bit of what I do.
All right. So you said you did the Crucible weekend, or did you say that you did it in 2015?
Yeah, so I did my initial weekend in July of 2015 and been heavily involved ever since.
What made you decide to go on the weekend? How did you get there?
Yeah, so in 2015, I was probably one of the lowest points of my life before the Crucible weekend. A couple years ago, before that, I had ended a relationship and with a woman, and I was heartbroken. Wasn't seeking help. I realize now that back then I was, just playing the big victim role and just blaming everybody for the things that were happening to me. And a good friend of mine at that time, who had done a Crucible weekend, he invited me, and I was like, you know what, man, thank you, but I think I'm done. I'm done with God. I'm done. This doesn't work. I've done Christian retreats before. They feel nice, but after the retreat, nothing changes. And so I don't want to go. And so he had told me, look, Mike, you have hit rock bottom already. Like, what do you got to lose? And I know how much this retreat is going to do for you. Our friendship's on the line. If you don't go, our friendship's on the line. So I don't want to lose that friendship. And so I went.
Wow, that kind of sounded like a little bit of an ultimatum.
Yeah. So I went, and I mean, right off the back, just the first night arriving, I was like, okay, this is different. Yeah, so the rest is history. 8 years later, I'm still serving both English community and Spanish community.
So when you got to the weekend, what did you want? Did you know what you wanted?
You know what? Coming into the weekend, I was mad at God. I was mad at the world. I was mad at myself. And I didn't really know what I wanted. It's not like I was looking to regain something or heal from something. I was just mad. I was mad inside. And I kind of just went more so because I don't want to lose that friendship.
Wow. Okay.
So I didn't really want anything. I was just mad at the world.
Yeah. So when you got there, how did God show up for you? This God that you're angry with, how did he show up for you?
In the beginning of the like, I would say the first part of the weekend, the way that he showed up for me was, if you could imagine like someone dumping a bucket of cold water on you, and that reaction that you have, you take that deep breath and you're just like, oh my gosh, what just happened? It was that kind of a shock from the very beginning. And immediately I was I was thinking to myself, okay, this is different. This retreat is not like the other types of retreats that I've done before. This is real. And immediately I started evaluating myself and thinking, okay, I've been playing victim and it hasn't worked out. It's time to take responsibility for my choices. I would say the second half of the weekend for me, the way that God showed up was just love and grace. Those are the two words that come to mind. Yeah, just love, grace, and mercy, I would say.
Yeah. So by not taking responsibility, for yourself and blaming everybody else, where had that gotten you?
Yeah, at that time, for not taking responsibility, I felt powerless really because I was blaming everybody else for my choices. I was blaming everybody else for the things that were happening to me. And so at the same time, I was hoping that someone else would fix my life.
Mm, wow.
I was waiting for someone to come along and fix my life. No responsibility for my choices.
Wow. That's huge. So you went, you got, God showed up, you got grace and mercy, you started realizing that you had to take responsibility for yourself. What else did you learn on that weekend that's been valuable since?
Oh man, just so much, so much. Some of the main points, I would say, main things that I've learned from that weekend. One, taking responsibility for your choices and how my choices have impact on others, and how with my choices, I can send messages to others, intended or unintended. And that my choices, they either have a reward or they have consequence. And so it's a lot easier for me to just blame someone else and have someone else fix it, and that'd be easy. But that's not the case. That's not reality. Reality is that I have to take responsibility for my choices, and that others suffer or reap the reward for my choices.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so one of the big things that I got from that weekend was responsibility for my choices, but also I would say integrity. Man, being a man of integrity. Do my words, do my words match my thoughts, and do my thoughts match my walk? Am I doing what I say I'm going to do? It's very easy for me to say, "Oh yeah, 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 I'll do it," and then cancel later on. That was kind of like my life, my thing, before the Crucible weekend. I was afraid to say no a lot of times to people because I didn't want to get rejected.
Mm.
I didn't want to get rejected, so I would always overcommit. I would always say yes, 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 and then not follow through. So being a man of my word, a man of integrity, learning how to say no, learning to say, you know what, no, I will not, or no, I don't want to do this, and learning to love myself and not looking to be loved or approved by others, just knowing that I am good enough, that God loves me, I'm a child of God, and at the same time I am working every day to be a better person.
So you and I met in 2016, became great friends immediately, and have done
Yeah,
a lot of life together.
yeah,
U2 concerts, Astros games. Those are kind
yeah,
of highlights and fun things, but we walked through some tough stuff as well.
yeah,
So
yeah,
one of the things that happened in this is you'd been rejected by this young lady. It had sent you into a depression, and you did your weekend. But the weekend didn't fix everything, and it didn't solve everything. If you're open to it, and I know we want to talk about all the victories that we've had since the weekends, because
yeah,
we want to be like, hey, it was great and everything fixed, and man, I've been on top of the world and nothing's going to get me down. But the reality is life still happens. So
right.
if you're okay with it and you're open to it, what have been some of the tough things since then that you've walked through, and some of the things you've still had to face that didn't go away from one weekend?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of times I see men leave a weekend thinking or feeling like they just had this life changing experience and everything is fixed. But life continues and life throws things at us. And so it's literally a journey. Every day I learn something new. Every day I have to connect with my Crucible brothers, and learn and grow and mature and keep learning and keep falling and keep learning. So some of the things that I faced after my initial weekend, um, yeah, so rejection was one of them. I had felt rejection my entire life, but this time it was different. I had recommitted my life to God after my initial weekend. You know what? I'm going to do things differently now. I'm going to take responsibility for my choices. And I had to start saying no to a lot of things. And I started having to say no to a lot of people. And that didn't go very well with some people because I was a yes man. I was a guy that would, with a smile, I could be a good friend, and yes, count on me. I'm there. I'm there. I'm there. Overcommit, overload myself. So one of the things I learned was it's okay not to say yes all the time. It's okay to say no. So having to put boundaries, healthy boundaries for myself, was one of the things that I've had to, you know, come across now after my initial weekend. And some people not liking that, some people rejecting me for my beliefs. Um, After my weekend, about 2019, I think, or 18, I started preaching. I was invited to preach at a church and then just been preaching at several churches. And I even had some relatives that resented me and rejected me because of that and would tell me some pretty harmful things. So that was one. And then a few years later, I met another woman. And I thought, okay, this is the one. I had this huge desire to be married and start a family. This is the one. And I fell in love, and I thought things were great, and all of a sudden I find her with someone else, and it just breaks my heart, and I'm shattered, and yeah, all these thoughts come across my head. My life is ending. My future that I had planned out just went down the toilet. And those old feelings of rejection, not good enough, not wanted, I'm going to be alone the rest of my life, they all just, amplified in my head. But the difference this time, after my Crucible weekend, compared to last time before my Crucible weekend, it was this time I had a community of men around me. I had men such as yourself, Andy, that were there for me, that listened to me, that held me, that heard me cry, and just also you guys were a safe container for me to let all my anger out, my emotions out. And from my first relationship, it probably took about 6 months of depression and anxiety and just to get over that. And then after my Crucible weekend, a few years later, same situation, different woman. It took me about 6 months to get over it. And the difference was now I handed it to God. I had my Crucible brothers around me. I looked for help. I seek for help, counseling, mentorship, life coaching, doing Crucible weekends. So I had a community now. And I have all these tools now of taking responsibility for my actions, knowing that I'm good enough. And so there was a huge difference. So, yeah, that was a big difference for me. Before my Crucible weekend, after my Crucible weekend. Yeah, but those things still want to come up and haunt me.
Yeah. So, and one of the things that folks, we're two friends here talking. One of the things that Mike did accept during this, and I think something that doing community allows us to do really well, is some of us got to speak some very, very hard things into your life. And we got
Yeah.
to remind you that some of the messages you were giving yourself and some of the things you were thinking about yourself were not good. And we got to speak some hard things into your life. But yet, because we had community,
Yeah.
even if they were hard to hear, we were still friends, and we kept going forward, and growth happened.
Yeah.
So why do you think why do you think that feeling has been such a big piece of your life? And why does that hurt you so badly and send you into the dark places like it has? Why do you think that is?
Yeah. So first of all, let me go back to the first comment that you said that, that there were some things said to me. And the reason why that was hard for me to hear was because it was true. And I think a real friend, a true friend, because there's love and respect, a true friend will also hold you accountable and speak into your life. I think if you're just a superficial friend, oh man, I'm sorry, or man, forget about that girl, let's go, there's plenty of fish in the sea type of deal. But a true friend that loves and cares, he's going to be there and he's going to speak into your life because he loves you. And so I had that. And if it hurt, it was probably because there was something there that I needed to look into
Yeah.
and work. And so I'm still on that journey. And to answer your question, why does that rejection still hurt? Yeah, so for me, there's been rejection in my life. I've dealt with rejection literally since I was a baby. And for me, yeah, it comes all the way down to father. Rejection from father, rejection from friends, from girls in school, not being good enough, being the chubby kid in school. And I was never really bullied, but I always went above and beyond. It was almost like a fuel for me to do more, be better, so that I can be approved and accepted. And so I played a lot of sports. I grew up playing sports since I was a little kid all the way to adulthood. And so, although I've always loved sports, but my real fuel was so that I could fit in,
Yeah.
so I could be a part of the team, And so now I'm learning that, you know what? If I have to do more just so that you can accept me, I'm okay not being in your circle.
Yeah.
I want to be in a circle of friends that love me and accept me just for who I am,
Yeah.
And so that's still a journey that I'm in. There's days where I'm rejected or it feels like rejection for whatever reason. And I got to constantly remind myself, Mike, you are good enough.
Yeah.
You are lovable.
Yeah.
God loves you. You are a child of God. And I don't have to perform for anybody to be loved and accepted. And that's really the type of friends that I want to be with.
Yeah. Mac, that's so good. I think the enemy knows how to attack us.
Yeah.
And so I think he comes after us individually, and he likes to get those messages in our heads, and he'll be like, hey, this is a message you heard before that you're rejected, you're not wanted. So let me just throw that at you again. Let me throw that at you again. But part of the soul work we do is getting past those messages to hear the true messages of God.
Yeah.
And to live into that. Man, that's
Yes.
so good. And now, it's really cool that you're getting to use that to speak at churches. You're a member of a church now, and you get to preach there, and those things are really important. And I love to see the growth that you've made.
Thanks.
Any other thing you want to say about what you've learned through Crucible that's been valuable for you?
Yeah, you know what? Another thing that is so much value for me is really having a good community around me. Another thing that I've dealt with most of my life has been loneliness. Not only from being single or but I moved out of my house at 18 years of age. And not only did I move out of the house, but I moved to a whole nother state from California to Texas. And when I got here, I didn't have a single friend, no job, no nothing, 18, 19 years of age. and really on my own. And so with Crucible, I have a community now. And I have friends that I do life with, such as yourself. You know, like you said, we go to ball games, we go to concerts. I went to your son's wedding, you know, and man, like you, I do life with you. I do life with men in my community. And the cool thing about it too is that when I get to staff weekends, I get to meet people from other parts of the world. Now I have friends in Mexico, you know, I have friends in Australia. I have friends all over the US. And it's just like, man, that's cool. Like the other day I met I met this guy at work who's Australian. And we got to talking, and I'm like, I have a few buddies from Australia that I met here in Houston. And it's like I wasn't able to say that before, you know? So my community it just keeps growing because the more staffings that I do, the more I go to these retreats, the more people that I meet from other places of the world. And those Spanish weekends, man, we've had men come from Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, just really all over Central and South America, you know, and the US. So it's been so cool to be able to spread this love all over the world, and it's growing, and it's just awesome. So yeah, that's one of the things that I also love and treasure so much about Crucible Project is the community. My circle of friends just, man, it's just getting bigger, and it's awesome.
Mike, would you have been able to make it through the past, how many ever years? I'm bad at math. 8 years? Yeah, you said 8 years. Would you have been able to make it through without your community?
Oh man, I wouldn't. I was so facing some of those deep depressions that I've gone through. Man, I was suicidal. There was thoughts going through my head that, you know what, the people around me, my friends, my family, they're better off without me.
Yeah.
You know, and also thoughts that I don't deserve to be happy because of the things that I've done. And so, yeah, there was I would fantasize about not being here anymore, and and really it's because of God, the love and grace of God, and because of the community of men that I have around me that hold me, see me, hold me accountable, love on me, and I'm still here, and I continue to do my work and continue to grow.
Yeah. So give us just a little bit about what's going on right now in your life. And I know this could change. We all know that. But what have you found right now that's bringing you happiness and joy?
Yeah. Oh man, I told you the other day, Andy. I'm probably living a highlight of my life right now. I'm in a good place in my heart. I'm a good place in my mind. So I've met another woman. We've been friends for 5 years, but just recently, a few months ago, started dating, and you know she's looking to go do her women's weekend here shortly. And
Yeah, for all you out there, we do have women's weekends as well, as if you've listened to some of the other podcasts. But yes, okay, so go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, interrupted you.
No, you're good. Yeah, we do have women's weekends as well. And so she's looking to go do her women's weekend as well. She serves at church. She's just my number one fan. And so that's awesome. Ministry wise, you know, just continuing to preach English and Spanish at churches. Just recently been invited to a youth conference here in Houston, a 3-day event where I'm going to be speaking in front of a bunch of young people, which is one of my favorite things to do. But another thing that I'm excited about, man, it's our Spanish Crucible weekends. So we've had about 6 to 8 weekends now. Lost track right now. But our Spanish community is just growing so much here in Houston. And this year, we had our first second level weekend as well, that we were able to offer it in English and in Spanish. And we had 8 men from our Spanish community come and do this second level weekend. And so I'm just excited about that.
Yeah, and what was that weekend about? What weekend was that?
Yeah, so it was Mission Weekend.
Yeah, and Mission Weekend is about teaching men how to find their mission and go working on mission. So we're trying to broaden that. So why is it so important for us to have weekends in Spanish in the native language for some men? Why is that important?
Yeah, yes. So growing up, you hear these messages either in person, someone telling you these things, or you hear them in your head. And they have a language to it. If you're born in Latin America, they're in Spanish. You know, if you're born here in the US, they're most likely in English. And so there's a deeper meaning. You just go a little bit deeper when you hear these messages and you do your soul work in your native language. And it's amazing how it doesn't matter if you're born and raised in the US or you're born and raised in Mexico or Central America or South America, those wounds are the same. Rejection, depression, loneliness. Those messages are the same. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. And so we want to give men and women the opportunity to do their work, to find grace, to find healing in your native language. We don't want language to be a barrier.
Right.
So it's amazing that we're now able to do this in Spanish as well.
Yeah, and my guess is that there's even some concepts that are better explained in your native language to really understand it.
Definitely. There's some things that first of all, you can't translate it really word for word. You have to almost explain it. But also there's some things that, because of our culture, they may be a little bit different or heavier, depending on what country you live in, you know?
Right.
So for example, speaking for myself, speaking for my, Mexican culture, the machismo, it's a big culture thing, this whole men don't cry, and I know it's here in the US as well, but in the Mexican culture and the Spanish culture, it's very heavy, it's this big, men don't cry, men don't show emotions, men just work, and provide. That was at least in my case. And so for me, the message that I took on as a young boy was I cannot cry or else I'm not a man.
Right.
I'm something else, And so after my Crucible weekend, I learned that it's okay to cry. Jesus himself cried and didn't make him less of a man.
Right.
And so now being able to share that in Spanish to my Spanish hermanos, to teach them it's okay to cry. It's okay to show emotions. Men do cry. Jesus himself wept.
Yeah. And is it even this idea that, and the machismo, I never talk about things that are bad. Like, I don't share what's going on. I don't talk about bad things. I don't have that. I've got it all under control. And nobody can tell me what to do. I've got this. I'm not weak. There's no weakness in me. I've got it all.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's this huge facade of what I want you to see and what I don't want you to see. Or this mask of pretending that I got it all taken care of, that I know what I'm doing, that I have it all under control, that I'm tough, I'm macho, but deep down inside, I'm broken.
Yeah.
I'm heartbroken. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm broke. I'm losing my family, and I don't know what to do. But on the outside, I'm tough, and I got it under control, and so I don't show any emotions.
Yeah.
And so in the Crucible Project, you have this space to be able to take off that mask and go deep and touch some of those wounds so that they could be healed and find grace.
So on these weekends, what have you seen that, especially the Spanish weekends, that have really gotten you excited and fired up about continuing this work in our Spanish communities? What on these weekends, what have you seen that you're just excited about?
Yeah, man. So one of the things that I love, and I always talk about this, and Andy, I've shared it with you as well, is so we've had Spanish weekends in Mexico years before we had Spanish weekends here in Houston. But the Latino that goes to a Spanish weekend here in Houston is a little bit different than the Latino, the Mexican that goes to a Spanish weekend in Mexico. And this is why. So if you go to if you live in Mexico or whatever, any other country, you live in Mexico and you go to a Crucible weekend in Mexico, you do your soul work and it's great. But if you're a Mexican and you do a Spanish weekend in the US,
or a Latino of any kind,
and you come to the US and you do a weekend here in the US in Houston, first of all, you already come with that message that I'm an outsider. I'm not in my country and I'm not speaking their language. The reason why we do these Spanish weekends is because we want to give you the opportunity to do your work in your native language, in your heart language. And so it's my judgment, it's my guess that most Latinos in the US have faced some sort of racism here in the US. And if not, most of us already have that message in our mind that I'm not welcome here. This is not my country and I don't speak the language. Mm-hmm. So I'm different.
Right.
And that's a huge message. But in these Spanish weekends here in the US, we've had men of service. Men of service are initiated men that come help serve on these Spanish weekends. And our men of service have been all English, white men that don't even speak Spanish. But they're here on our weekends because they have a love for men, a love for God, and want to serve. And so what I love, and really if you ask almost any Latino who has gone through a Spanish weekend here in the US, is if you ask them, what was one of the most impactful things for you in the Crucible weekend? Most of them will tell you, man, one of the most impactful things for me was seeing these white men that don't speak my language crying with me, loving on me, serving me. Oh my gosh, that made such an impact for me. Mm. Because for most Latino men here in the US, yes, they'll go and serve, for example, a white person, a white man, but because it's his job. He's right. Doing the job. But now you have a man that doesn't speak Spanish, who's not paying him, serving him, crying with him, loving on him, picking up his plate, washing dishes. Man, you have, these men like Roy and Roy Wooten, Gabe Sanchez, William Netzinger, and all Chris Cash, all these other men that don't speak Spanish, serving and loving on these Latinos. That speaks so much to the Spanish community. It speaks to them. I love you. You are welcome here. You are one of us, and I'm here for you, brother. And to this day, those four guys that I just mentioned have such an amazing bond with the Latino community, and even though there might be a little bit of a language barrier, when they see each other it's like, hey, hermano, how are you? Oh, this love and just, man, that's one of my highlights right there.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
it takes them from feeling like they're an outsider to where they do belong and they get to do
Yeah.
soul work and that men's work. And I know that the men, we've done work, we've got work going on in Australia. We've got work going on in Africa. We've got, all over the world. And men's wounds are men's wounds no matter where you live. And that's what's fascinating. It's important work. Well, brother, anything else you want to share with us today before we end this?
Man, just for anybody out there who hasn't done their work, who hasn't gone to a Crucible weekend, get to one. For me, going to my initial weekend, it was, like I said, dumping a bucket of cold water for me. It woke me up.
Yeah.
But what has helped me grow and mature and keep learning and keep getting up has been continuing to do my work. Staffing weekends, being in soul groups, just continue to do my work every day, staying in community, doing life with my Crucible brothers. That has been what has helped me learn and grow and mature. And so if you haven't gone to a weekend, get to a weekend. If you have done a weekend, man, continue to do your work. It's awesome.
Man, thank you, Mike. This has been good. Again, you found this podcast. Look for weekends to go and participate. Be a participant in one of the weekends. I believe it will change your life. Men, women, Latinos, people in Africa, people in Australia, all over the world. We've got these weekends, and they're just for this, so that we can do life, that we can learn how to do it well, to deal with our wounds, to grow, and to become the men and women that God has created us to be. Thanks, brother.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me. I love you.
Love you, bro.
For more information about our weekends, please go to thecrucibleproject.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Rate and review wherever you are listening, and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Also, don't forget to check out myjourney2.com for your free 2-week trial. That's myjourneyto.com. Thank you for listening.